If you believe lobby groups, and dude, that's a bit like running with scissors now that I think about it. Marmy always advocated so staunchly against that. But if you do believe them, EVs have never penetrated more deeply, so to speak, into suburbs and the regions in our Australian society. Electric dystopia doubtless is nigh, and hopefully we'll all be jamming one in quite soon. A charging cable, obviously. Doubtless, I will see you down there. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. The salary packaging lobby group is all cock a hoop today, but as I see it, a bit more cock than hoop, and by a substantial margin, over a story that they just made up earlier. All they had to do was put the books in an oven at 180 degrees and bake until tender. EV FBT exemption, a hit with workers in regional and outer suburbs. NALSPA is the novated lease lobby group, and if you believe it, these days, NALSPA identifies as a deeply committed champion of net zero and achieving climate targets generally, but mainly by virtue of its members writing fat stacks of government-incentivised novated lease financing. They're quite keen on that also. NALSPA's transition happened, as I understand it at least, on the very same day the government's golden floodgates opened on novated leasing. Go figure. What a coincidence. So what you can see here is the result of them getting the intern, like probably maybe AI, to collate the top 10 postcodes by state and territory of people who took out a novated lease on an EV or a plug-in hybrid from Q2 of 2022 to Q3 of 2024. And then, seemingly, they cherry-picked, probably at a senior executive level, not that the intern or the AI couldn't have done it just as well, but seemingly cherry-picked the 3 or 4 most regional and or otherwise busted-ass postcodes from that top 10 in each state. And here we are. The PR industry just thrives on this crap. This is, of course, in my opinion at least, how the cake of electric dystopian bullshit gets baked. From Werribee to Wanneroo, ordinary Australians living in the outer suburbs are actually the people most likely to take advantage of and benefit from the discount to battery EVs and plug-in hybrids provided through the FBT exemption and novated leasing, and keep those fat stacks of cash flowing into the coffers of our already well-heeled members. Let's not forget that, even though they did decline to mention why they actually exist. Rechargeable Rowan Martin talking there, the cheese of NALSPA. I'd really like to see the other 6 or 7 suburbs in each of those states and territories which they didn't mention. A different picture might emerge then. This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a huge discount plus 4 extra months of Nord for free right now in Nord's Black Friday exclusive deal. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC. Online security threats are, of course, everywhere, but you do not have to be the next victim. And that's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down efficiently in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year NordVPN plan receives a huge discount plus 4 bonus months on top. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Link in the description. Using NordVPN is dead easy. You just subscribe, download the app, and you connect. 1 click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is, of course, the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as 1 cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity, and your devices secure. Masking your location means you'll be able to access streaming and other services that might be blocked where you live, plus you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now, boost your security, get that huge discount, and enjoy those extra 4 months completely free on every 2-year plan. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/AEJC, link in the description. Why does this matter? Does it matter? Is regional and outer suburb adoption of EVs really a trend? Given that there remain barriers to motorists considering EVs, without the FBT exemption in particular, we would be reducing the opportunity for many working Australians to own a cleaner and more efficient vehicle that meets their transport and lifestyle needs. Yes, quite. We would not want to grab that opportunity by the testes and squeeze pretty hard anytime soon, would we? Grab a sick bag, dude, because this gets even better. The latest industry figures show plug-in hybrid sales are up 128% over the past year. Yeah, plug-ins are up, but EV sales are pretty soft, frankly. Some would say tanking. In context, according to VFACTS, 71,800 electric cars were sold in the first 10 months of 2023. That's battery-only EVs, right? The first 10 months of this year, 75,878. That's 5.7% up. However, there's been an influx of new EV models in the market and massive discounts by, in particular, Tesla, and the huge government incentives remain. Model Y is the top-selling EV in Australia, and the rear-drive version of that is the most affordable one of those, and also the one with the best battery. It's not the biggest battery, but it is definitely the best by many metrics. Between March and April of this year, that particular vehicle, the rear-drive Model Y, dropped $9,500 in price. And that drop made it $16,400 cheaper than it was just 18 months earlier. And just a few weeks ago, Tesla announced a further $3,000 discount across the range, but only on cars purchased through a novated lease. That makes a Tesla Model Y rear drive almost 20 grand cheaper than it was just a couple of years ago. We'll get into the good news and bad news of that in just a sec. It's mostly bad, but did that prop up or increase Model Y sales in any way? In a word, no. This time last year, Tesla had sold just over 24,000 Model Ys in Australia. That was the first 10 months of 2023. This year, same period, just under 18,000. That's a 27% knee in the gonads. Briefly now, I suppose, let's go back to plug-in hybrids. By choosing plug-in hybrids, Australians can begin their transition to cleaner electric driving sooner. Rechargeable Rowan there, actually using the T word in a press release. Amazing. On my world, right, the problem with this woke idiocy and the advocacy that inevitably orbits it appears to be that not everyone wants to be part of the transition. Whichever transition we happen to be talking about, not everyone wants that. I don't particularly want to live in electric dystopia. I certainly don't want to be nudged there, and I'm not alone. It's another one of those voice referendum situations, I fear. I want the freedom to choose a vehicle that's right for me without having to conform to some essentially made-up societal bullshit expectations. Perhaps this is a character defect, but It's one that I share with many others, I'm pretty sure. We saw exactly this with the voice referendum. We're seeing it right now with the government's appalling misinformation and disinformation bill, which thankfully looks like it's going to be defeated by a narrow margin. So maybe that's an example of democracy functioning as it should. The execution of free speech in Australia might actually be stayed, however temporarily. And I'm going to take that as a win. I know plenty of people who don't give a shit about the entirely fictional virtue of EVs and plug-in hybrid ownership. They just want the right car for them, and they don't want some asshole authority or a lobby group putting them on a leash and walking them there like a fucking dog. It's particularly galling when a lobby group does this, right? Because if someone actually authentically believes in net zero, for example, you can respect their commitment even if you don't agree with them, and you can empathise perhaps with their clear scientific literacy deficit. When an organisation transitions, into the green cloak of virtue, but is actually just still motivated by getting even more money for its members who are already well-heeled financiers, let's not forget, it's intelligence insulting and utterly galling. At least it is to me. Being told what to do in this way is not the Australian free society in which I grew up. The lazy stereotype of EV drivers as wealthy inner city folk is being smashed as more motorists are purchasing electric vehicles thanks to the FBT exemption and a wider range of EV options. As I see it, that's just not true, or at least not substantially true. It seems pretty clear to me that Nalspa here took a list of 80 top-ranking postcodes in terms of EV and plug-in hybrid novated leases directly from their records, and then they cherry-picked the most busted-ass 29, and more or less, here's your story. Actual data science, I would argue, does not work that way. You have to see all of the data, and I suspect if we did, a completely different picture may emerge. They're also conflating the term EV and plug-in hybrid because it pumps up the numbers, obviously, and that's convenient, and I suspect it also skews those numbers to the regions and outer suburbs, and their members don't give a shit about that in any case because the same fat stacks of government incentive cash are inbound to them irrespective of the exact powertrain. Battery, EV, plug-in hybrid, all good, dude. When I, and also I suspect you, use the term EV, we generally mean battery EV, not also plug-in hybrid EV. And pretty clearly, these battery EVs remain the domain of A, the wealthy, or at least the affluent, and B, the inner city. You can't buy a new car unless you're affluent, especially an EV or a plug-in hybrid. Like, you just can't. If the cost of living crisis is down on you like a ton of bricks, a new car, any new car, is off the table. As to the inner city and that lazy stereotype, dude, it's councils like Mossman in Sydney with more millionaires per square metre than just about anywhere else in the nation that have the biggest problem with, how should we put this, rich fuckwits running extension cords over the pedestrian footpaths to charge their Teslas, I know, because they couldn't think that far ahead. Cherry-picking 29 postcodes out of 80 and pretending a stereotype is being smashed is an absurd logical fallacy. It's essentially just a bullshit proposition, at least as I see it. The Electric Vehicle Council, which is another fairly grubby lobby enterprise, in my opinion, smearing green virtue on coal-fired grid operators, etc. In other words, its members, does this kind of thing all the time also. Just Google the term Australia on track for 100,000 EVs. Your search results are going to be dominated by headlines like these from Yahoo, the Australasian Fleet Managers Association, MyNRMA, Fleet EV News, Australian Manufacturing, etc. They scream, for example, Australia is on track to hit an annual milestone of 100,000 EV sales this year, with industry experts saying we've never had so many electric vehicles on the road. Imagine that. This concept, right, of 2024 being the big one, in which more than 100,000 EVs are finally sold here. It does sound kind of awesome if you don't think too hard. A psychological barrier being smashed, perhaps. More to come, doubtless. Except that number derives, and this whole story, in fact, derives from an Electric Vehicle Council thought bubble. Correction, press release from August, in which they could only concoct a six-figure sales result by combining EV sales and plug-in hybrid sales and extrapolating. And I'm going to call it now, dude. Australians will not buy 100,000 battery EVs in 2024. It's just not going to happen. The first 10 months are 75,878 battery EVs. So if we divide by 10 and multiply by 12 and take away Albo's IQ, we get 91,000 battery I hate that. Just kill something every day to remain operationally proficient, dude. We get 91,000 battery EVs, which is up from a bit over 87,000 in 2023. And I would call that, at best, a modest increase. A disappointing one, certainly, when you factor in a five-figure decomposition in the price of the country's most popular EV and the injection of even more affordable EVs across the board, and no change in the already generous incentivisation. It appears that we do not, as a nation, actually have latent demand to buy more brand new EVs than that every year, even when propped up by billions in foregone government tax revenue, which is essentially what the incentive really is. It's money that cannot be spent on hospitals and roads and border security and health and things of this nature. The EV sales problem does not appear to stem from fundamental supply and demand economics. It just doesn't. Supply is healthy and it's improving, price is dropping, competition is increasing, but sales remain disappointingly stagnant of battery EVs. In an overall market where sales are modestly up this year, the lackluster enthusiasm for EVs appears to be due to saturation, like not everyone wants one. Even when the government is throwing such a bone, only about 1 in 10, actually slightly fewer, new car buyers seem disposed to catch it. I'd further suggest that with the plug-in hybrid incentive going tits up officially on April Fool's Day 2025, in just a few months hence, demand for them post-April the 1st is gonna plummet inevitably. So we could easily be looking at 2024, the year of peak EV demand down under, at least for the next few years. Now back to this business from Rechargeable Rowan about smashing that stereotype that EVs are only being bought by affluent green masturbators with harbour views kind of thing. My description, obviously not his. In the domain of novated leasing and salary packaging, what's really about to be smashed here is not this stereotype, but rather the ownership economics at the end of the lease for many owners. Orange Richard Nixon's new bestie, Electric Jesus, can slice almost 20 grand off the price of a Model Y in Australia if he wants. And like for him, that's just one more miracle among so many. The base on Mars, the cave rescue, Optimus, robotaxis. We could be here all day. This is a miraculous disaster for the punter who already signed up back when the incentives kicked off and Model Ys were comparatively so much more expensive. See, one of the things about novated leases is that you agree to procure the vehicle at the end of the lease for a particular price. It's written there in the contract. You signed it. And that residual price is usually the somewhat conservative future projection of the value of what that car is going to be in 5 years or whatever your particular term is. It does not include the effect of unforeseeable miracles such as this Kill Bill style katana wielding frenzied attack on the price. Nobody saw that coming. 20 grand almost off the new one just tanks the resale value of the old one. That's the one you lease. It's down there in the car park while your nose is on the grindstone, dude. Rechargeable Rowan's members make their money irrespective of this phenomenon, but you get to wear that gap in value, dude. That's your problem. I think, therefore, on balance, that it would be great for Rechargeable Rowan's organisation to transition to one where they figure out how to eat this particular shit sandwich, which will doubtless be delivered by Uber Eats over and over and over incrementally for months and months to come. Only, of course, in every case, minus the bread. Dealing with that is going to be endless fun, isn't it? So many employees locked in now, soon to be handed the ultimate miracle of a barbed wire enema at the end of their contract. So widespread will this be that I suspect proctologists everywhere will be booking endless holidays on the Amalfi Coast. Imagine that. Novated leases, however, sticking with the proctology theme, they're not shit. They're not. Okay? If they're right for you, they're not shit. I've got a heap of resources on my website that can help you out with the decision and all of that stuff. Novated leases are not right for everyone. They're just not. Sorry, Rechargeable Rowan, for letting the truth creep in, but here we are. I'll help you get a novated lease at the right price if they suit you. Sure, that's one of the things I do. So I've actually got skin in the game for getting as many people into novated leases as possible. And here I am telling the truth about them. But anyway, the car you choose has never been more important in my estimation if you want to protect your future financial interests. This is super important. My advice to you, and I'm not a financial advisor, but if you're considering helping Rechargeable Rowan's flagship navigate its way to net zero and save the planet by novating your very own EV, you're on the fence and you're thinking of jumping, my advice would be maybe to think about a brand with less of a flexible disposition on the fair value of its cars, such as, I don't know, a real car maker. Tesla is presently throwing all of its existing customers just under the bus. Nobody calls them out for this. And I wouldn't choose an MG either, at least not right at the moment. They've got a pile of MG4s that is still busily incinerating cash hilariously. Just parked out the back. How many would you like, dude? That admittedly is a different kind of miracle. It's the miracle of ordering a shit ton too many and then the factory calls one day, inevitably demanding its money. Oops-a-daisy. It still tanks the resale just as effectively as Electric Jesus could, however. So there's that. Stability, okay? I just checked 3 EVs randomly, which have been here for some time, which I kind of rate, that come from proper car makers as opposed to a cult run by Orange Richard Nixon's court jester. That'll get back. Kia EV6 is the number 10 seller among EVs in Australia so far this year. It's a decent EV. Hyundai Kona Electric is number 12. I lived with one of those for a year and I loved it, especially when I put some performance tyres on it, like, oh, then it had grip, amazingly. Hyundai Ioniq 5 also, it's kind of a clone of the EV6, or to be fair, that's more of a Versa Vice kind of situation. The EV6 is the clone, I think it's fair to say. It's number 20. Anyway, Ioniq 5. Now, the prices on those three, and you can check them out for yourself on redbook.com.au, but the prices on those three have been remarkably stable for the past 3 years. That would be the showroom floor when they were new prices. That's what I'm looking at here, okay? Obviously, they all depreciate. And I urge you to do the research on the EV you might be considering. If you buy one of these more stable options, it may not be quite as sexy, but then again, you won't have to drink the Kool-Aid, will you? Which, depending on what kind of crazy person you are, is either a plus or, I suppose, a minus in some cases. Without building resale value stability into your choice of an EV, then novated leasing a new EV is hardly going to be a free kick, as many Tesla owners in Australia are about to discover.